welcome back to the SDG Action Zone. Very good. I love it. I love that energy. I'm Nadira Hira. I'm your moderator in here, and we are so excited to be on day 4 of our super week for SDGs, and it really has been a super week. As the attention in the Secretariat building turns to financing for development today, leaving no one behind will continue to be our focus in all of the amazing talks and sessions we have for you today. And it's really been a great way to kick off what promises to be an incredible 2 days as we get to the end of our super week. Those of you that are new to the SDG Action Zone, you're in for a treat if you couldn't tell already. This is the inaugural week of the SDG Action Zone. There has never been a space like this before at the UN, and we're positioned to bring the world to the UN and the UN out to the world. So it's been going well so far, don't you think? I love that. This feels like a very energetic part of the audience here. I like to see that. Yesterday, we not only wished the goals happy birthday, it's 4 years of the SDGs, we also committed to meeting the world we want and the world we need with the announcement of the, anyone know? Decade of Action. So 2020 and beyond, we're going to achieve those SDGs. So this is the space where it's all going to happen. So we have lightning talks on innovative financing, a VIP session around lunchtime, UN Digest, a recap of mobilization around the world during our global week of action for the SDGs, and sessions for keeping financing for development promises and education above all. And even more lightning talks focusing on raising the voices of marginalized peoples. So you are going to want to be in this room. This is the place to connect, mobilize, and inspire. So with that, there's a tiny bit of housekeeping, which most of you know, exits this way, bathrooms out that way, and exhibits in the back. But when there are people on stage, we'd love for you to come to the front and watch them, or stay a little quiet. And most importantly, we are live streaming, so let's have a huge cheer for our live stream audience at UN Web TV. Hello, and if you want to post to them, and we would love for you to do that, it's at sdgaction.zone. Most importantly, we want you to post, so please use the hashtags ActForSDGs, SDG Action Zone, and For People for Planet. And with that, I am so excited to introduce our first lightning talk. This is a series of lightning talks exploring innovative financing for development. They'll shine a spotlight on transformative thinking, partnerships, and ideas to deliver the financing needed to meet the 2030 agenda. And because we are all about keeping things on time, I'm rushing through all of this so that you can get straight to your talks and we can get back on schedule. So, he is a former TV journalist, now the Global Engagement and Partnerships Manager for UNDP. He also heads up an innovative new conservation fund called Lion's Share, working to engage advertisers in the biodiversity crisis. Please welcome Boaz Paldi.
Thank you so much. I see I have a clock here for 29 minutes and 54 seconds. I'll need about 2 minutes of your time. We have been using animals in human advertisement for about 150 years. They sell our products very, very well. In fact, 20% of all global advertisement includes an image of an animal in it. That equals to $118 billion a year. So, what we're saying is that the animals have been really kind of like doing a lot for the brands. At the same time, there is a severe crisis in nature. We are losing species at an unprecedented rate. And we recently seen a report that if we don't do something immediately and drastic, we will lose over 1 million species over the next decade. But it's much more serious than that. We cannot solve the climate change issue without solving the biodiversity issue, the issue of the oceans, and the biosphere. So we have to work, all of these crises are coming together and coming to a head, and we have to work on all of them together. So what we are planning to do is work on the biodiversity crisis and the oceans crisis. And what we're asking is that advertisers who use images of animals in their ads donate 0.5% of their media spend, that is all the money that goes into making an ad and putting it to air, into a fund called the Lion's Share. And that fund will tackle the crisis in biodiversity. We celebrated yesterday our 1-year anniversary of being operational. Not only the SDGs, we're 1 year old, we're not 4 years old. And so very, very new, very, very unique financing for the SDGs. And we really want to encourage as many brands as possible to get involved. Brands are going to use advertisements anyway. They're going to be selling their products. They're going to be using animals in their ads. So what we're asking is that at the same time as you're using your ad, as you're selling your product, as you're making your pitch to the consumer, you also save the planet and be part of the solution to this very, very, very serious crisis that we're facing. So that is the basic idea of the Lion's Share. I told you I'll need less than 2 minutes. We, as I said, we started about a year ago. We are already active in various places, and we already see the impact that we can have. Although we are still in the capitalization phase of the project, and we hope that we will reach about $100 million a year in funding for the biodiversity crisis within the next 4 years. We already, with the first contributions that we have, we've already managed to activate in the field. We have a few projects already around the world. I'll tell you about one of them. In the Niassa Reserve in Mozambique, there was a problem with poaching of elephants. And clever scientists, not us, our partners, we're in partnership with WCS, with UNEP, with various other conservation networks, and UNDP's own biodiversity experts, realized that the issue was that the rangers' communication equipment was out of date. So we spent only $50,000 on upgrading the rangers' communication equipment, and in late May, early June of this year, we celebrated 0 poaching for a year. So we went down from 200 elephants poached per year to 0. So that's a small success that we've had with the Lion's Share, but a significant success for the elephant population of the world. We're also in Niassa, in the Niassa Reserve we've already been to the Niassa Reserve. We're also in the Lasor ecosystem in Indonesia, where it's the last remaining place of 2.6 million hectares of virgin forest where orangutans, rhinos, tigers, and elephants all roam together. The problem is that humanity is encroaching on it, and the palm oil plantations are constantly encroaching on the forest. What we've done is we've purchased disused palm oil plantation, and we're going to rehabilitate that back into the forest. But at the same time, we're being very well aware that there is a population out there that lives on this land. So we're going to have projects for this population that we can give them a sustainable income that doesn't rely on the forest for their income. So those are just some of the little projects that we've already started. We're hoping to do a lot more over the next years. We're hoping to scale this very, very quickly because we really are facing a very, very large crisis. I'll tell you a little bit about our partners. This idea came from an Australian production house called Finch. A guy called Chris Nelius was sitting watching TV at home. He was watching a commercial for, I think it was insurance. And there was a family of 5 cheetahs in the commercial, and they had absolutely nothing to do with the insurance. And suddenly he clicked that this is unfair. The animals are selling our products. They don't get anything back. So he went to his boss, a guy called Rob Galuzzo, who is an incredible man. And Rob ran with it. Finally, they ended up somehow meeting me at the UN. The UNDP took it on, and we are now operational. The first big brand to join us was Mars Incorporated. They've been an amazing pioneer partner to us, really kind of taking on the pioneer spirit of this initiative. We've had some very, very good media companies join us. JCDecaux has joined us. I don't know if you've noticed around New York City, we have a lot of advertisements on bus shelters for the Lion's Share. The Economist is a partner of ours, also in this week's Economist. If you go to the newsstand, you'll see a Lion's Share advertisement there. But the Economist is also contributing 0.5% of the revenues that they receive from all ads that include animals in it. So that's another partner. Deutsche Welle has also joined as a media partner, the Caring Group, a few others, and we're really kind of trying to really scale as quickly as we possibly can. And reach the $100 million threshold that we're looking for. I think that's about it. Is there time for questions? I'm not sure. I'll open it up for questions if there are any. No, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Boaz. What an amazing initiative, bringing together the creativity of advertising to help save animals, right? And leveraging the resources to be able to fuel that back into saving the very, very precious species that we have going on. My next speaker is an amazing woman, not only because she is listed as one of the top 15 climate activist women by Time magazine, alongside Greta and a handful of other amazing women, including Hindu Ibrahim, one of the SDG advocates. Her name is Anne. She is the Director of Board Governance and Strategy at CalPERS, which builds retirement and health security for California state, school, and public agency members. She's also the author of the new book, congratulations on that, by the way, The Greening of Global Investment and the Environment, Ethics, and Politics Are Reshaping Strategies. So, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dauda. It's a complete delight to be here. I am thrilled that CalPERS can contribute to this session on innovative finance. Well, finance is just a fancy word for money. And we know anything that's going to happen with the Sustainable Development Goals, for good or ill, is going to take money. Where the money is, who controls the money, who decides, is going to be a critical part of achieving the global goals. Now, CalPERS, just to introduce ourselves, we're one of the biggest pools of money in the world. We're a pension fund. That means we gather up the savings of nearly 2 million people in California, public workers like firefighters, judges, janitors, university professors. All of that money gets put into a pot with contributions from the employers, and then we invest that money. Right now, we have about $400 billion that we have to look after and invest for at least the next 100 years. So this is why issues like climate change, sustainability, inclusive growth, prosperity matter to us, because we can't invest that money to make the returns to pay pensions unless the whole system works. So, I want to tell you a story to begin about my favorite bank robber. You have to have one. Willie Sutton. No, we're not talking about Wall Street investment banks. This is an original bank robber, the real thing. Willie Sutton in the 1930s in the United States, a very successful bank robber, and unfortunately, eventually the law, unfortunately, maybe not, fortunately, the law caught up with him, and he was asked in the dock, Willie Sutton, sir, why do you rob banks? Why does your microphone collapse? Can you take that? All right, just a little technical moment. So let's go back to Willie Sutton. Thanks, Dowd. Thanks, Dowda. Willie Sutton's in the dock. Bank robber, finally the law catches up with him, and he's asked, why do you rob banks? And Willie Sutton is very clear. He says, because that's where the money is. And that really is a message for us when we're looking at the whole question of the global financial system. The money is not with government. The money is not with aid agencies. The money is in the private financial markets. So the question is, how does that money get deployed in a way that's going to both meet the Sustainable Development Goals, but for pension funds like CalPERS, how is it going to help us make the returns that enable us to pay pensions for the hard-working public sector workers who our pension fund really belongs to? So I want to give you an example on climate. Climate Action 100 Plus. Climate Action, goal number 13 out of the Sustainable Development Goals. How do we get to grips, not just with finding new money to invest into the technologies and transition that's needed, but how do we actually think about the money that's already invested in companies that are producing the emissions? So at CalPERS, it's a very big fund. We have something like 11,000 companies in our portfolio of publicly listed companies on stock exchanges around the world. And when we crunched the data, we found that about 100 companies were responsible for the vast bulk of the emissions. And overall, these company emissions globally contribute to about 1/3 of the emissions that are causing global warming. So think about that. About 100 companies, if we can get those companies to bring their emissions down in line with the Paris goals, we're going to make a real contribution to meeting the goal of getting to net zero by 2050. And that's what it's going to take if we're going to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. So what do we do? So CalPERS has many sister funds around the world who, like us, very large, are invested in all of these companies. We had a series of meetings hosted by the French ambassador to the UN, François Delattre. Thank you, François, for providing everyone with a lovely breakfast, where we could sit and make this plan. We realized that if we could get all of the money organized, then together, as the owners of these companies, we can drive change. So let me tell you where we are now. We launched this call for action at the PRI just over a year ago, and the project itself was launched at the One Planet Summit. We've got the 100 companies that are responsible in our portfolio for about 85% of the emissions, and we have all of our investors, our fellow investors, signed up for 3 things. Number 1, for these companies that are the source of these massive emissions, we're calling them systemically important carbon emitters. In other words, if these companies don't get to grips with the issue and make the transition, we're never going to hit the goals of the Paris Agreement. Said and done. These companies, first of all, we're saying, 1, governance. You have to, at board level, take responsibility for the transition. That matters because we, as the shareholders, we vote these directors in, and we vote them back if they've done a good job. We also need these companies to stop lobbying, using shareholder money, to lobby against the rules and regulations that are going to help us get to net zero by 2050. Thirdly, we need these companies to actually give bonuses and rewards to companies for hitting those targets, not for increasing oil reserves. We actually need to embed these ideas of sustainability into the financial rewards that executives get. So that's the first goal, is governance. Secondly, we're saying each one of you 100 plus companies need to set a target for getting your own emissions down in line with the Paris goals. That means about an 80% cut. So for some of these companies, this means a complete transformation in their business model. This is not an easy thing. The third thing we want is full and frank disclosure under the TCFD framework. You can Google that and look it up. But it's a framework which will show us how these companies are bringing their emissions and their strategy in line with the Paris goals. So where have we got to? Well, first of all, we have a huge chunk of the world's money signed up for this project. In just over a year, we've got to $34 trillion. Now, why does that matter? It's because this money belongs to the ordinary working people in communities around the world. That money in pension funds and banks and insurance companies is part of the common wealth, the wealth of the commons. And we need to start thinking about financial services as a service, something which serves the real economy and serves the needs of ordinary working people around the world. The next thing I want to tell you, so we have the money organized in Climate Action 100, is we have global participation. We have investors. I think we have a slide which shows a nice map. Here we are. All the colors that represent heat of varying degrees. We have investors in Asia, in Europe, in North America. This is where the $34 trillion is coming from. So the next issue is what impact are we having? We're asking for these 3 things: governance, the board to take responsibility; secondly, targets and plans; thirdly, disclosure. Well, we've already got some quite significant results. I'd like you to go to our website, climateaction100.org, and you can see a written agreement that we have with the board of Shell. This is Shell, the oil company. When you go to buy your petrol, please decide where you're going to spend your money. Shell has actually committed to take responsibility for its emissions right through its chain of business. That means when gasoline or petrol is actually being bought by you, the consumer, to pump into your gas guzzler, Shell is saying those emissions count and we're responsible for bringing them down. But we've also got companies like Nestle. Who doesn't love a chocolate biscuit? Everybody knows Nestle. They have got a global supply chain which goes right through agriculture and water around the world, and they have committed to net zero by 2050. We also have utilities like Duke Energy in the United States. One of the biggest companies was in the news a couple of years ago for a massive collapse of coal ash into the river dam. That company has committed to net zero by 2050. So we have many others. And the reason this is working is because money talks. And the important thing is that this money is not belonging to the capitalists, like the man on the Monopoly board with the cigar and the big top hat. This is the commonwealth. This is the money that ordinary working people save for their retirement. It's long-term money that relies on sustainability. If we're all going to be able to pay pensions and actually meet the Sustainable Development Goals, we're in it together. The financial markets need sustainable development, and sustainable development needs finance. So, thank you. It's one example of what can be done, and I think it's only the start. Thanks.
Absolutely amazing. That's another reason why I want to move to California, to know that that money that I would be putting into that would be safe at hand. So well done. What an amazing example of using a $300 billion fund to move commercial interests to be more responsible, to be more sustainable, to really, really help achieve what the world has signed up to, both with regard to the Sustainable Development Goals as well as the Paris Climate Agreement, and reducing carbon emissions from the producers and shifting the responsibility from the consumers to the people that are producing and making those options and those choices available to us. So thank you, Anne. Our next speaker is a friend of mine who I am honored to call a friend. She's a senior gender advisor to the UN Secretary General, advancing UN gender parity strategies and leading the Spotlight Initiative, which is a 500 million euro initiative aimed specifically at addressing the pandemic against violence against women and girls. So welcome to the stage, Nala.
Great. Dada, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. So in many ways, Spotlight Initiative is not a natural fit for the stage this morning. We are a UN-hosted fund with a quite traditional donor, the European Union. As Dada said, 500 million euro investment in ending violence against women and girls. But there's a reason why I'm here. We have integrated innovation in 3 ways. The first is the content of what it is that we're doing. The second is how it is that we're doing it. And the third is where we are taking this fund into the future. So the first is our content. Spotlight Initiative, Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, is an SDG fund. As such, it is intended to contribute towards the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals at the country level. And it's focused on one specific area, ending violence against women and girls. As our Deputy Secretary General often says, Goal 5 on gender equality is the docking station for all of the goals. Why is this? Because without the meaningful participation of half our societies, without their expertise, their capacity, their knowledge, we will not reach the 2030 agenda. We know that women in business is good for the bottom line. We know that, that women's equal participation in the labor force literally unlocks trillions of dollars for our national economies. And we know that women's participation in peace processes, we can in fact quantify the impact on sustainability in the long run. This is a huge driver of the goals. But the largest obstacle to women's meaningful participation across all areas of life is violence against women and girls. I'm sure you all know the statistics. 1 in 3 women will experience violence in their lives. In some countries, this number is double that. I invite you for a few hours this afternoon to walk around your world with that statistic in mind, because we rarely think about people when we talk about statistics. But walk around your world and put a face to the statistics of 1 in 3. I promise you it will shift your perception. Women, the violence that women and girls face in schools, in communities, in public life impacts the ability to participate in all areas of life. So Spotlight Initiative's first innovation is that it is about creating a foundation, the pre-required conditions for the achievement of all of our goals. And in doing this, we are documenting the way in which addressing violence leads to a knock-on impact on all of the goals and on the success of all of the goals. The second innovation is in the way in which we are working. We have evidence that the single largest contributor to ending violence against women and girls is a strong women's movement at the country level. So we are investing in that. We have a dedicated pillar on building a women's movement, and we've put civil society at the center of everything that we are doing. They design the programs. They help to implement the programs. They work hand in glove with donors, with national governments, with the United Nations, and they monitor us. They shadow monitor everything that the program is doing. And in doing this, we are shifting power relations at the country level and contributing to what in many spaces right now is a shrinking civic space. And the third element of innovation is where we are going. 500 million euros is a significant investment, but it is seed funding. We are operating in 26 countries at the moment. We are a demonstration fund. The idea is that we demonstrate the impacts that we can have, and we then invite others to come to the table in order to levy this and to scale it up in other countries. But in order to have a real impact, Spotlight Initiative is working to leverage this initial investment to shift our funding base to a mixed model of funding and financing. A new generation of financing mechanisms is mobilizing private capital in addition to public sector resources to achieve gender equality and end violence against women and girls. And we need to be a part of that. Global private financial assets are estimated at $200 trillion. Achieving the SDGs is a drop in the bucket, 500 trillion of this. Closing that gap is a matter of political will. But beyond this, we are seeing a new generation of investors. Traditional investors are more aware in the Me Too era of the risks and impacts of violence in the workplace and home on their bottom line. Additionally, from next year, 2/3 of private wealth in this country will be in the hands of women. 1/3 of private wealth globally will be in the hands of women. And what we are seeing increasingly is that these women want to know that what they are investing in not only impacts their bottom line, but equally is contributing to the public good, whether it be climate justice, gender equality, or other social justice elements. This is a huge opportunity. So in Mexico, Samoa, Malawi, and PNG, Spotlight Initiative is working with women's organizations to leverage these new conditions. We're organizing workshops at the local level to strengthen women's organizations' knowledge on finance, to stimulate demand for debt financing for those working in the sector. This includes specific trainings on crowdfunding in several countries. We are creating attractive financing schemes to channel national investors' capital towards these organizations, ensuring they understand how this affects their return on investment more generally and the impact of resilient communities on investments in all sectors. Spotlight is also exploring the possibility to partner with specialized finance institutions to prepare blended finance proposals that would decrease investment risk by providing investments to a structured portfolio of civil society and social enterprises. From being the single funder and service provider, we are looking to change the narrative for Spotlight Initiative to act as a facilitator between investors, governments, and empowered implementing partners. So from our goal to our contribution to the way in which we work and where we are going, Spotlight Initiative represents an innovative model for delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nala. I was walking into the office this morning and I saw this. I love t-shirts, like funky t-shirts. And this woman walking with this awesome bag had a t-shirt that said, "The future is female." And as a father of a daughter, I couldn't agree more. We all have something in common, apart from that we're all being governed and guided by the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. We've all come from our mothers, who held us, who birthed us, who taught us the value that we have, and the idea that 50% or 51% of the population could be left behind is just utterly unacceptable. So, we ranged from this innovative financing session from a idea and a concept that was born to protect animals and mobilize resources to be able to fuel that with regard to the advertising sector and the creative community, to pension funds that are pushing the companies that they invest in to be more responsible, to a public partnership where people are being entrusted with a brighter future. So thank you all. We are going to take a break right now here at the SDG Action Zone for about 15, 20 minutes or so. We're going to come back at 12:15 with a high-level session. Those of you online, you're more than welcome to join. Those of you in the room, we're unfortunately going to have to clear the room, and we're going to ask you to step outside to be able to be brought back in a little bit later. So thank you very much. We'll see you soon.